This is the Sunday news roundup.
It's Sunday.
So we're going to start with one story. What's going to happen after that story is
there's another story after that.
Yeah, it's multiple stories, usually about 5 or 6. Try and keep it interesting. Try and put a bit of a daft one at the end.
End on a high note.
TV gold types. You might find that a bit funny. And we've got an Ark Survival Evolved story to start off with, and that always goes down well with the Ark Survival Evolved fans.
Dinosaurs and that, innit?
In the news this week, survival crafting but with dinosaurs game Ark Survival Evolved left early access after spending almost 3 years in development. While it should be good news to many, Ark's move from early access to just regular old access has been as rocky as the last few months indicated it might be. The launch ran into numerous problems and the game's launch version went live later than expected. Not only that, but when the game did go live, players found themselves struggling to actually get in to play it with massive overcrowding of the servers. Developer Studio Wildcard introduced a new cluster of servers for launch and consigned the early access servers to a legacy status, which will no longer receive customer support. As all those early access players moved over to the new batch of servers for launch, they were joined by a horde of new players, because of course they were, the game was launching, and that caused all kinds of congestion. Lead community manager Jat addressed the game's troubled launch, saying, "I know the launch has been a little rough and we're very grateful to all of you. As we get further into it, things will smoothen out and the experience will be much better. Thank you for hanging in there." Is smoothen a word?
Smoothen out.
Smooth.
You can smooth something out. Smooth. Ark caught some controversy during its last few months in early access. The game controversially received a paid DLC expansion whilst the game was still in early access. Then, just before the game was due to launch, they hiked the price from $30 to a full fat $60 and then delayed the game because it wasn't ready yet. Ark has found itself making headlines yet again during its launch with the announcement of a $45 season pass literally hours after it left early access. Studio Wildcard announced the season pass will give players access to the already released Scorched Earth expansion and a further 2 unannounced expansions. But the news was met with overwhelming negativity and a recent influx of, you guessed it, negative Steam reviews, with a newly announced season pass taking the early access game above $100 if you want all the content.
In the lead up to this launch, it has been rocky. It's not had the best headlines at the very least. I don't know what the experience has been like for the actual players. On the PR front, on the news front, it hasn't been great for it. Players looking for games just can't find them. The server list is absolutely crammed, which you might expect because it's a game launching, but they kind of didn't help the situation by declaring those old servers to be legacy without customer support, which pushed obviously a lot of old players up to the new servers. Combine that with all the new players jumping in, all kinds of a mess.
I just think you need to earn the right to betray everybody. Okay? Ark have just jumped straight in, like, we're the new guys on the block. Yeah. Here's the game we're not finishing. Yeah. By the way, you dickheads, you're paying for more content. Ubisoft had to work to get to the point where we all hate them now. You can't.
They gave us some beyond good and
evil.
You know
come on. They at least earned it. That's why it hurts so much when they do it.
That's part of the problem with early access. It's just a blurred line of when the game is in early access and just in access. So you can just play it, you can buy it, and this is the game. But early access is just kind of a free pass to be a bit shit because you can say, well, it's not finished yet. Earlier this week, we reported on a leaked Bethesda Game of Thrones project, which turned out to be complete bollocks. American retailer Target briefly had a placeholder webpage on their site, which read Bethesda: Game of Thrones. But there was no such game in the works. The page was only shown thanks to a simple URL edit, which basically anyone could do. So we all thought that Bethesda might be working on a Game of Thrones game, but they weren't. Not only that, Bethesda said in the past they've turned down the opportunity to make a Game of Thrones RPG. And as it turns out, again this week, another famed RPG studio has also turned down the chance to make a game set in the Game of Thrones universe. None other than Obsidian, the guys best known for Knights of the Old Republic 2, Fallout New Vegas and Pillars of Eternity, revealed in an interview with Eurogamer that they themselves turned down a Game of Thrones license. Why? Well, the company wasn't sure how far they could actually stretch the material at the time. Obsidian CEO Fergus Urquhart told Eurogamer that in 2005, 6 years before the TV show debuted, EA offered them a chance to make a game using the Song of Ice and Fire IP. Urquhart, however, struggled to see what they could do with the property and turned it down because he believed players wouldn't have much choice in the world because everything was already established. Urquhart said the only way to do an open world RPG in the Game of Thrones lore would be to do a prequel, similar to what happened with Knights of the Old Republic, because at the time the books were still still being written, and they couldn't do anything that would affect the series' storyline. Interestingly, the CEO said Game of Thrones would probably be better suited to an RTS genre because of the different factions and political intrigue, which would work well within an RTS.
Obsidian is one of like our favourite studios, like Pillars of Eternity, Knights of the Old Republic, Fallout New Vegas. Like everyone in the office is a fan of Obsidian things. We all like RPGs. These guys are arguably one of the best there's ever been.
They're like secret MVP when it comes to RPG making, because they like the properties they work on. You know, they're established like Bethesda and whatever with Fallout 3. They come along, they make Fallout New Vegas, which is just a better game.
Knights
For
of the
me,
Republic.
which is controversial, but for me, BioWare make Knights of the Old Republic, then Obsidian come make Knights of the Old Republic 2, which is better.
They're ace. They're quite the unsung heroes of RPGs, and you probably don't hear about them enough because they don't do anything worth complaining about. And they've got quite a small, well, they've got quite a cult fan base, right? Game of Thrones, at the time when it was just books, cult fan base. Obsidian, cult fan base. Heavy lore-driven stuff. It would have worked perfectly. But yeah, what they ended up saying was there's actually not that much fantasy stuff we can work on because there's dragons and there's White Walkers and stuff in the Game of Thrones books, right?
But it's hinted at early on, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's mostly kind of political, isn't it? Families and twists and turns, a lot of that drama. And they're more interested in the traditional D&D stuff, a thief, a wizard, and all that. So it makes sense. And isn't it good to see a company turning down something because they don't think they can add something to it, rather than grabbing it because they're like, yes, we've got the golden goose. Pure integrity, and it's a classy move by Obsidian. So again, another Game of Thrones game. I'm glad it wasn't made because it just wasn't meant to be. Beautiful. In other news, a Microsoft spokesperson told Glixer this week that the original Xbox One model is to be discontinued, with the Xbox One X and slimmed down Xbox One S now leading the charge for the company. The spokesperson said, as is typical for the console industry, we stopped manufacturing the original Xbox One when we introduced the Xbox One S. The original Xbox One model launched in 2013 for $499, and it came bundled with the ill-fated Kinect 2 camera. However, in 2016, Microsoft released a smaller and more efficient Xbox One S, which retailed for a much more palatable $299. There is also the upcoming Xbox One X, which Microsoft is touting as the most powerful console ever made, with a focus on 4K gaming, and it's retailing at $499.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to imagine that the Xbox One cost the same as the Xbox One X when it came out, and in the span of 3-4 years or whatever, that price has stayed there, and the console you're getting now, well, the Xbox One X surely is going to be a much better proposition than what they were expecting you to get with the original Xbox One, which had a Kinect in it, which fucking no one wanted. Just cutting it off, like they said, it's like standard practice for the industry, but it's also very symbolic in a way that like they're leaving that behind, and they've got the Xbox One S now, which is a better version of that console anyway. Yeah, very interesting, and buy Xbox One original, I guess. Last week at Gamescom 2017, Microsoft studio Rare spoke a little bit about their upcoming free roam pirate game, Sea of Thieves. At the presentation, they revealed there would be cross-platform multiplayer between the Xbox One and PC version, which is cool, and they also showed just how well it would play on low-end PCs. Most interestingly, the game's design lead Ted Timmins said they are including an option which will lock the PC version to 540p resolution and 15 frames per second gameplay. That probably doesn't need pointing out to you, but that is much lower than the 1080p 60 FPS ideal that most companies would usually strive for these days. Why are they doing this? Well, the game's executive producer Joe Neate said they are trying to go as low as possible so everyone can play the game even if their hardware isn't quite powerful enough. Timmins said, we've actually added a 540p mode so you can go below HD. We've also added a 15 FPS frame rate lock because when we were talking to the community, some people were like, I'm actually happy playing 15 frames a second. We were like, that's actually really cool. We should support that. It's below our Rare certified minimum spec, but if you're enjoying the game, why should we as developers not queue for that?
I'm sure this wasn't a like, yeah, I'm happy with 15 FPS.
Yeah.
It's kind of a,
I can deal with it.
All I can do is, yeah, I can tolerate it. Yeah. No one's like going, do you know what would have made this game better? That's cinematic 15 frames a second, man. I don't want to play enough FPS. Destiny 2 and 60 FPS, get the hell out of here.
The fundamentals of what's happening here are pretty interesting. They're catering to the very low end of PC hardware. Surely, if you've got a PC from the last 15 years, you should be able to run this game at those settings.
Standard
right?
def.
Like, I mean, any PC, any shite laptop from in PC World or whatever for $199. Literally anyone who owns a PC could play this, which is fantastic. You should really applaud them for trying to do that. And anyway, it's not the kind of game that, you know, is going to demand a fast pace of performance and graphically, you know, looking at 540p is one thing, but even the art style of the game probably will survive pretty well at those resolutions.
It's like big, pastel-y coloured, you know, low texture sort of stuff. It looks nice, it looks good. I mean, if you want to experience what that's going to be like now, just change the settings on this YouTube video to 540p. See how you handle it. Maybe you like that more. And finally this week, YouTube has adopted a new logo. And the changes are, well, you could say they were pretty seismic. As YouTube's head of art, Christopher Bettig, explains, we have the word tube in a tube. This is weird. No one knows what this is. You see, as he's pointing out there, tube is slang for a TV set. The problem is tubes nor TVs are really relevant to YouTube, so Bettig decided to keep the classic play button but went with a modern twist. They dabbled with fonts based on classic television and the VHS era in addition to a more modern look, but they settled on something that retained the essence of print. As for the classic play button, they kept the design but changed the colour. Bettig said they settled with the classic #FF000, a really pure red that goes with the RGB of video. Bettig said the new look is an evolution, not a revolution.
So we were really excited about this in the office.
This is fantastic.
Just reading the blog post about this. There'll be a link on your screens right now. I mean, you should read this. There's some really interesting stuff. Getting a red that goes to the RGB of video is such a
How red is that red?
I mean, it's a bold red. It's a bold red for a bold move and a bold change and a bold new era.
And that's what, it's kind of what they're saying with the FF000.
Yeah.
That zero really personifies how much tolerance they've got for these other reds. Zero. They don't care about any of that. They want. So what do you think of that classic RGB red and the YouTube logo in general? Maybe there's another story we just mentioned that could have piqued your interest. Let us know down in the comments below. Anyway, remember to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here, check out plenty more of our content that we release every single day for you guys. It's on the screen right now. There's also a link to our Patreon if you want to support the channel and check out our weekly podcast. We'll see you next time.